जय राधा माधव कुंज बिहारी। जय राधा माधव कुंज बिहारी। गोपी जना वल्लभ गिरिवरधारी। जय गोपी जना वल्लभ गिरिवरधारी। यशोदानंदन ब्रज जनरंजन। यशोदानंदन ब्रज जनरंजन। यमुना तीरा वनचारी। यमुना तीरा वनचारी। यमुना तीरा वनचारी। जय राधा माधव कुंज बिहारी। हरे कृष्णा 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 हरे हरे, हरे राम 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 हरे हरे। Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Ram Rama, Hare Hare. Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Ram Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram Ram Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram 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 Hare Hare
Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram Ram Hare
Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram Ram Hare Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Jaya Prabhupada Prabhupada Srila Prabhupada Jaya Prabhupada Jaya Prabhupada 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 Jaya Jaya Prabhupada Jaya Prabhupada Prabhupada Jaya Jaya Prabhupada Jai Shri Harinam Sankirtan ki Jai Srila Prabhupada ki Jai Anant Koti Vaishnav Bhakta Brinde ki Jai Jai Nitai Gaura Premanande Hari Hari Bol Hare Krishna Om Ajnanatimirandhasya Jnananjanashalakaya Chakshurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manobhishtam Sthapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kada Mahiyam Dadantikam Namam Vishnu Padaya Krishna Preshthaya Bhutale Srimate Bhakti Vadi Pashatya Desha Tarini Vancha Kalpatarubhyascha Kripa Sindhubhyaeva cha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivashadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna. So everyone is feeling comfortable? Yes? Okay.
Nice. No jacket.
No jacket?
Right, actually. I had jacket, but
Yeah, it's improved since morning,
yeah.
isn't
Sorry.
it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, I'll just you.
Yeah,
you
sure,
want to come.
sure, yeah. Hare Krishna.
Anand Prabhu, Rauch. ఎక్కువ మంది లేదు నాకే పర్లేదు మీరు రావచ్చు ఇంకా స్టార్ట్ అయిపోతుంది ఓకే
Hare Krishna. For those who have dialed in, if you are okay, please enable video so we can see you also, who are all dialed in.
Sorry, I invited one person.
Sure, yeah.
But with that we will take.
That's okay, yeah, sure.
Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna. Yes, so.
Yes, Prabhu. So we are in second chapter now.
Wonderful.
We are second chapter, verse number 16. Yeah. So that's where we are. All of the participants here are very regular attendees. They all did, most of them did DYS, and then they transitioned into the Bhagavad Gita class. So we started around June, July. Yeah. So we did introduction, and then we did the first chapter, and then we are in the second chapter. So that's where we are.
So whatever you're saying is also being heard online or no?
Yes, bro. I hope there. Yeah. Mic is on.
Yeah.
Hare
As long
Krishna.
as
We are able to hear it.
everyone was able to hear.
Very
Prabhu.
okay.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, mostly they are here, most of them, but then Corona has
Yes, that is true. We have like I think 8 people online. So
Yes, bro.
7.
Yeah, and then many of them are families. So
Exactly, there'll
yeah.
be more people,
Yeah,
but-
there may be more people.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So yes, please. Today's a Q&A session. So anything that any comments or questions that you may have?
This group is a very participative group. There's a lot of discussion and questions usually.
You asked me 2 questions. Let us begin with that.
Yes, that's correct. Yeah, let's do. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. You want to?
Okay.
Yeah. If you have a question ready, you can ask.
Yeah,
Otherwise,
so-
I'll ask. Yeah.
Yeah, so we come every Sunday, become more looking forward for the class every week, and then the application of like we do 3 or 4 slokas, and the discussion, very good discussion, very good. Prabhu clarifies many doubts or many questions devotees have, but then the application of this is where at least for me, I'm still not completely putting in practice. So I think I know. You told me that more chanting, more daily chanting, daily meditation, or daily prasad. So there I lack, but then I would like to hear.
So you are asking as to how do you apply that which you have discussion on
Yes.
in the classes? How do you apply some of those teachings or understandings in day-to-day life? Is
Yes,
that?
yes, Prabhu, yes.
And you've asked this question before, and
Yeah, chanting.
the answer was given that you should try chanting and offering food. and only eating sanctified food, and you're working on it, you said.
Yeah.
Okay. So if there is any other comments that I have on this?
Yeah.
Yeah?
Yeah.
Okay, interesting.
More tools and I think because so much of Maya has
bad things coming in between, we deviate ourselves.
Yeah.
Couldn't concentrate much towards the devotion with Krishna.
Okay.
So, and sometimes we go to, I pray with other gods, and sometimes I go to Mataji's Aarti and with my wife and family with Ganesha. So it's like more on, for us every god is equal, so we are in that kind of mindset. We still we couldn't actually take Krishna as the final destiny. So we currently going all along, and we couldn't practice much what
Okay.
we are currently going through in the books. So we would like to give any more advice that how to get involved.
So that's like another question or another topic,
Okay.
Yeah,
isn't it?
Yeah.
You are asking about there's already faith.
Yeah, faith
There's
is
some
yes.
there's worship that is done on a daily basis or
Yes,
on
so
a
that
regular
we get
basis.
more attached. Yeah.
Already that is in practice. However, maybe you've heard or maybe you've understood that Krishna is the primal Lord. He
Yes.
is the source of all. And since you specifically mentioned worshipping Ganesh or worshipping Devi, Mata, as you called her, um, so that is going on, and you're still figuring it out or trying your best to see how you could worship Krishna as the
Yes.
source of everything. That is,
Yes.
so that's another topic, isn't it? First, we'll address the first topic as to just going back and tracing the origin of the Bhagavad Gita as we know it right now. The Gita in the format that we know. The origin of it is about 5,000 years ago, when on the battlefield of Kurukshetra, Arjuna had a serious meltdown, and he was really very depressed and confused and crying and not able to find the enthusiasm to fight. So he was having a meltdown, and Krishna, he kind of he restarted the entire processor that was there. He jump started it again through his instructions, correct? So that took roughly I think around 600 plus verses. There are 700 verses in the Bhagavad Gita. The first chapter, about 70 plus verses, is just Arjuna talking, Krishna simply smiling. And in fact, even that has not been revealed. So 600 plus verses are words of guidance or instructions that Krishna gave Arjuna. Yes? Some people say that it took them about an hour or so for this entire discussion to take place. Yeah?
Yeah.
So most probably Arjuna understood after an hour, and he got a certificate from Krishna that you have done the Bhagavad Gita course. Krishna certified him like that. Right? Now coming to where we are trying to do that hopefully in a year's time or 2 years' time. So when Arjuna heard the Bhagavad Gita, after that he started applying it. We are trying to do it in bits and pieces, isn't it? So that could create certain confusion, or it could kind of feel that we are not able to apply it, because there's so much more to be learned, to be understood. There's so much more that will be explained later on, which will give more clarification. It would give us more tools. It would help us become more committed to wherever uh, Arjuna was, at whatever stage Arjun was. It will help us do that. So we may have to be a little patient and reflective. However, if during our discussions there are certain practical subjects that come up, whether it is related to the verse or not, if there are certain practical things that come up, and if it is acceptable to a lot of people that that could be applied as a principle or it could be used as a tool, you could use it as a tool. So one of the things I guess that came up was chanting. Most probably Krishna told Arjuna at the end of the discussion that Arjuna, sit down, chant one round and then fight. He did not tell Arjuna that. But since he told Arjuna about meditation being one of the processes to reach the supreme absolute truth, so chanting is a process of meditation. Meditation is always helpful, so you could always apply that. Secondly, we all subsist on grains, on food. And food is what makes us who we are. Correct? Like, what did we have for lunch today? What did you have for lunch?
Rice, dal.
Rice and dal. So he ate rice, dal and some sabji.
Yeah.
What did your wife have?
Same.
She had rice, dal and some sabji.
Yes.
So he ate rice, dal and sabji, and now that rice, dal and sabji has been assimilated into this male form. His wife has eaten rice, dal and sabji, and that has been assimilated into a female form. So the food that we eat becomes who we are. Isn't it? The food that we eat becomes who we are. So the food that he has eaten helps him to perform his functions as a male. The food someone else eats helps them to perform the activities as a female. So food helps us perform activities based on our identity. Correct? Now, eat sanctified food. That sanctified food helps us perform our activities as spiritual people, spiritual persons. Isn't it? So the same food that the food that he eats, because it was sanctified food, it helps him perform his activities as a spiritual male. And the food that his wife eats, that helps her perform her activities as a spiritual female. So that is the second tool that was discussed about, that if you eat sanctified food, which means you offer the food to Krishna and you eat it, then it helps you function as a spiritual person. Now, specifically because it is Krishna Prasad, it helps you function as a devotee of Krishna. It means it kind of purifies you. It gives you that identity, it nourishes you so that you can have that identity as being a devotee of Krishna or a servant of Krishna. Okay? So these two things are very good, they are very helpful tools. Then you come and you have discussions every week. If you want, you can have discussions more. Want to. It's up to you. Maybe you all work in the same office space. Maybe, not in March, but in April, you'll again go back to the same office space, I guess. So there, during lunchtime, you could come together and say, hey, why don't we have lunch Gita discussion program? And over lunch, you can have discussion on the Bhagavad Gita. Yes? So these are certain tools. You've already done DYS. It's called DYS?
Yes.
DYS. So there, you must have learned about association and coming to the temple or having an altar at home. So these things are all helpful. These are very simple, practical steps that motivate us to progress on the path which we have learned or understood right now. It motivates us to go ahead on that path, to go ahead on the path of Krishna consciousness. Okay? All right. Now coming to the second topic Prabhu mentioned is about trying to enthusiastically accept Krishna as the source of everything, isn't it? So we will need knowledge for that. So the more we develop our understanding about how Krishna is the source of everything, if all we need to do is read the 7th chapter, the 9th chapter, the 10th chapter, and the 11th chapter of the Bhagavad Gita, that's enough material for knowing that Krishna is the source. In fact, it will be more than what we need, much more than what we need. It will kind of overflow our plate, so you can distribute some of that to others too. Like tell somebody else that, hey, this is what I read today. Like chop, 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 chop. Krishna is the source of. He is the strength of man. He is the intelligence of the intelligent. He is the amongst the mountains. He is the Himalayas. The animals, he is the lion, and so on and so forth. So many things I mentioned. He is the taste of water, he is the fragrance of the earth. So, there's so much available there that you could be convinced, and there's enough to distribute around. So you let other people also know. Right? You have at least 100 plus verses which describes that. Is that all right?
Yes.
Perfect. Once you know that Krishna is, at least the Bhagavad Gita kind of establishes him like that, it's like black and white now. Then you get to understand that. Okay? Like in the Bhagavad Gita, it will be mentioned, Yepi anya devata bhakta bhajante shraddhayanvita tepi mameva konte. So if they are worshipping other demigods, indirectly they are trying to worship me also. They are trying to worship me. This kind of worship is not considered to be the direct worship. It is not considered to be that which is normally recommended. However, it is acceptable. Worshipping others than me. So that specifically is mentioned by Krishna in the Bhagavad Gita. So there are other verses like that. So maybe right now it's too early to be talking about it. But if you want, you can seek that reference. Yepi anya devata bhakta. Just look up and see which verse it is.
7th chapter. 7th chapter.
Is it all right?
Yes.
Yeah.
So Mataji, it's an open Q&A session.
Oh, is it?
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah. So far, Srinivas Prabhu asked one question, Shashi Prabhu asked one question. So we've covered 2 questions so far.
I was listening on the phone while driving.
Okay.
Yeah.
Sure, yeah. So devotees on the phone, please go ahead and ask your questions if you have any.
I have one question.
Yes, please.
If you see, every human being and the living thing will have his own Atma, and also along with that, it will have the Paramatma. So, Sri Krishna will be there in every living soul. So, when Sri Krishna is present in every living soul, then why the bad things are being done by that soul?
Okay. Good question. If Krishna is present somewhere, then everything should be good. Correct? Because if God is all powerful and is all knowing and is all merciful, then everything should be good. And if everything is not good, then most probably one of those qualities is missing in God. Correct? So he may be all powerful and he may be all knowledgeable, but maybe he is not merciful. And that is why things are going bad. Or maybe he is merciful and he is all powerful, maybe he is not all knowledgeable. So he doesn't know what is going to happen. Or maybe he is knowledgeable and is merciful, but is not that powerful. So things happen and there is nothing he can do about it. Yes? So God should be having all of those 3 qualities, and possessing those 3 qualities means things should be good. Today morning I was having another discussion and a similar point came up, was raised, and so my answer is going to reflect the same thing. Sometimes as humans, we give undue importance to our existence as humans. For example, if y'all ate food today, did you eat cooked food today? So when you cook food, there are few lives that are lost. Organisms die, correct? And just imagine how many organisms must be dying every afternoon just in Sammamish if they're eating cooked food. Now, if you collate all of that data, it could be massive. This is like every day. Maybe millions of lives are being lost. But because they belong to other species, Krimi-Kitak it is called as. Creepy crawlies or bacteria, things like that. Krimi-Kitak. Because these life forms are from that species. Or in Australia, nobody knows how many hectares of forest land was burnt down, or trees got burnt down because of the forest fires. That was just recent. So every tree is a living being, so dead. So did we kind of post anywhere that so many bad things are happening to trees? It was all about the environment and how the environment is affecting us.
Mm. Yeah.
It's all about us humans, isn't it?
Mm.
So I'm not saying this is good or bad. No, I'm not trying to in any ways make all of us feel guilty. It's not about that. What I'm trying to point out is that things work or happen in a particular way in this world where we are forced to kind of not be concerned, or we are forced to overlook certain aspects, certain happenings within our own lives, like so many organisms dying. We are forced to do that. It seems not so relevant. So there is another perspective, a perspective from a different platform, where the human species may not seem as relevant. There is another perspective. We cannot be so important that everything kind of revolves around the human kind. For us it is important, but do you think the trees are concerned about how humans are kind of suffering or having any problems? Do you think any of the trees kind of have a symposium? Hey guys, these humans in the Middle East or somewhere, they're kind of just killing each other, and therefore we should have a crisis meeting. Do you think the animals have any conferences like that? No. Now, according to the Puranas, there are 84 lakh species of life, or 8,400,000 species of life. Only 400,000 are human species. 8 million are other species of life. And they are not affected by that which happens to the human race. Okay? So first of all, we should try and get the correct perspective. There are bad things happening to us. There are bad things happening in the society. They need to be addressed. How about understanding that how bad things are happening to 8 million species other than the human species too? Right? So now the concern is there's so much of suffering going around. Okay? So first of all, maybe we should get down from the high pedestal and try to respect every form of life. And understand, just as there is certain data that is completely irrelevant to other species, or just as data about other species is completely irrelevant to us. For example, some time back I had read that right now in this century, in the previous century, 60% of the insect population has become extinct. The insect population of the last century, 60% of various species. I'm just trying to quote some data. Forget this, what is the reference. I could be completely wrong about it, but I did read something like that. That this century and maybe further on, 60% of the insect species that was known and living on planet Earth has become extinct. Is there a hue and cry being raised about it? No. Similarly, these species are not really affected by how the human population is suffering. They are not as much concerned about it. So, God is the God of all, and He hears the cries of pain of every species, isn't it? He's not going to specially only listen to the pain that comes to the human form of life. He's not just going to do that. So that is clear, isn't it? Now let us address the problem of, or let us address the point of God being present. How does He allow things going bad from where He is, from His perspective? You see, from God's perspective, the soul, while it is going from one body to another body, Dehantara, from God's perspective, the soul is simply changing clothes. When was the last time you kind of discarded your old clothes and took on new clothes and cried about it? Did you kind of write an article on it that how I lost my old clothes, I threw it away and I feel so bad about it, it feels literally I murdered them? So the body for which we are so concerned is being described as a covering for the soul. And this covering, this external form has been offered to us for a particular purpose, and when that purpose is not achieved and this can no longer be functional, immediately another is offered to us. So from the perspective of the absolute truth, transmigration is not such a cataclysm as it is to us. Okay? So that is the second point. Change of clothes should not be so cataclysmic to anyone. So can we just suggest that it is all right for people to do wrong things? No, we are not suggesting that. When we have a particular tool or instrument, it is important to learn everything about that tool and to be able to make the best use of that instrument and tool. Now, if the body has been offered to us, we need to use the body for the maximum potential. Not just optimum levels, but maximum potential. So what is the potential that the human form of body offers us? It allows us to be introspective about life, death, good, bad. It allows us to do that. That is what the human form of the human body does. The other species of life, their body does not afford them to do that. Right? So the maximum potential that can be achieved with the human form is self-realization. And in fact, that is the best use of the human form of life too. Because no other form of life, no other species of life helps us to understand and realize the self. Not possible. Try to teach your 2-year-old child. Do you think the child would understand self-realization? Well, it's sometimes difficult. Or a 4-year child, do you think the 4-year child can understand how transmigration takes place? A little difficult. So if we have the same approach that the 4-year-old child has towards life, even when we are 40 years old, we are going to be in the same situation as a 4-year-old. What is a 4-year-old concerned about? When can I eat? How much can I eat? When can I sleep? How much can I sleep? As soon as I feel the need go to the washroom, I need to go to the washroom. And whenever I feel I'm in danger, I need to seek protection. These are some of the basic instincts of a 4-year-old. Now, if as a 40-year-old or as a grown-up person, these are the various aspects for which we are working 9 to 5, we are working 24/7, our approach to life is similar to the approach of a 4-year-old, because a 4-year-old cannot have relationships, a 4-year-old does not have strength, a 4-year-old does not have the discrimination of a 40-year-old. Therefore, a 4-year-old cannot function like a 40-year-old. However, the 4-year-old and the 40-year-old are functioning for the same purposes, towards the same goal. It's about what can I eat, when can I eat, when can I sleep, because I am in danger of losing things, how can I protect myself? And whenever I need to visit the washroom, I need to go. So that would not be the best use of the human body, because the human body is meant for introspection. Do you think the animals introspect? Today my sleep was really deep. I had sleep apnea tonight. But the human does that. A human can introspect as to, I feel tired in the morning. Did I have good sleep or not? So when we use our introspection only for purposes that can be fulfilled even as a 4-year-old, there's not much, we are not being very progressive here. So introspection has to be done for these basic bodily needs, and what is that much more? Self-realization. So human form of life helps us ask, inquire, accept and understand principles of existence like birth, death, why does one grow old, why does one become diseased, what is the cause of all of this. So when one tries to use one's existence for introspection about one's existence per se, like why do I have to grow from a child to a young man to an old man and then die? Why do I have to do that? When one introspects like that and tries to seek answers otherwise, or tries to seek some meaning into it, then a person is receptive to certain other perspectives, is receptive towards answers. So only when we become serious about self-realization can we become introspective in seeking answers and being receptive when those answers are offered to us in relationship to questions like, why are bad things happening in the presence of God? If we do not have that kind of introspective bent of mind, I'm not saying inquisitive here, please. I'm not saying, yes, you know how inquisitive mind works? An inquisitive mind looks at the trees and like, why are there purple flowers blooming on this? What if I spray paint them green? That is how an inquisitive mind thinks. And what would be an introspective mind think? An introspective mind would think, if these flowers are blooming now, does it mean it is a new life? Is this a new creation coming about? So the introspective mind wants to understand the origins of existence, whereas an inquisitive mind simply wants to understand whether it is possible and practical to change things according to my convenience. So when we come with an inquisitive mind to understand about why in the presence of God things are going bad, we are just wanting to ask questions, maybe we will be receptive or we will be not receptive. Whereas an introspective mind would be receptive towards answers and would try and mull over those answers, think about them. Now, since most of us are wanting to be introspective, now I would like to try and address this question. Is that all right?
Yes.
So, God is all loving, God is all merciful, God is all powerful, and God is all knowledgeable. That is the truth. There's no doubt about it. This is the truth. Being parts and parcels of God, we are also knowledgeable, we are also merciful, we are also loving, and we are also powerful. Because we are parts and parcels of God. I mean, why would we be defective products? Isn't it? As expansions of God or as parts and parts of God, we have essentially the same qualities of God, and all we have described is qualities of God. So God should have those qualities, we also have those qualities. The relationship between God and the soul is that the soul has the ability to serve God, and God has the ability to receive the service from the soul. This is the relationship between the two. So in order to serve someone, you have to make a conscious decision, and the conscious decision has to be voluntary. Right? Like in India, sometimes there is a concept of VRS. You know what is VRS? Voluntary retirement. It's as if you get to choose. You don't get to choose. You can only access that scheme if you have finished so many years of service. If you have done 20 years of service, then maybe you can access VRS. But if somebody says, if you are just given the option of VRS, voluntary retirement scheme, one could you have to work at least for 20 years and then you can have this facility. So conditions apply. So it is not as voluntary as we think. It is conditional to 20 years of work there. And work is not voluntary. Because if you leave before that, you don't get retirement benefits. As simple as. So you're forced to work, although a person says, whenever I want, I can quit. The idea that you wouldn't receive a pension forces you to work. Correct? So it is not as voluntary. When we speak about service being voluntary, it means that we always have the option to quit service. We always have the option to quit service. So when the soul has an option to render service or quit service and chooses to quit service, then the soul comes to the realm of illusion. When the soul expresses its franchise, expresses its independent, expresses the ability to make choices by choosing to render service, that keeps the soul in proper perspective with God. So when we choose to render service as souls, we choose to render service voluntarily because we've chosen not to reject it. When we choose to render service, then it is our choice not to reject it. You're not forced. Because I said, here no conditions apply. It is choice. So when we choose to be situated in our constitutional position, then it is like we are facing the sun. When you are facing the sun, when you are in your proper situation, looking at the sun, there can never be any darkness. Even though the fact is, by blocking the rays of the sun, we ourselves are creating darkness in the form of the shadow. The sun is the remote cause of the shadow, the immediate cause of the shadow is the object. So when the object, that is I, the soul, is facing towards the Lord, although on my back there is a shadow, there is darkness, I do not see it, I am not involved in it because I am facing the sun. However, when I decide to change my situation 180 degrees, go against my constitutional position, voluntarily reject service, one faces away from the Lord. Now, the Lord's mercy is on our back, which means He always has our back. But we get involved in the darkness, that is shadow. And it is this darkness, because darkness means there will be various grades of or various shades of black. Some light, some dark. Which means there will be various shades of every quality. So there will be goodness to not goodness, good to not good, and all the range in between. All of that we get to see in the shadows. So when we speak about why bad things happen in the presence of the Lord, when the Lord is already present within us, the Lord's mercy is shining on all of us. However, it is falling on our backs. We are not involved with it anymore. What are we involved with? Darkness. And in darkness, what reigns supreme? What is the most powerful force in darkness? Fear. And where there is fear, there is going to be distrust, there is going to be unhealthy competition, there is going to be conflicts, all arising from fear. Yes? Why are there bad things in this world? Even though the Lord is there, there are bad things in this world because we are in this world. As soon as we get out of this world, there won't be bad things for us. Isn't it? And if all of us start thinking like that, we'll all get out of this world and there won't be bad things for any one of us. And please don't worry about the world becoming empty then. There's no problem with the hospital having no patients. It's a good situation, very good situation. Isn't it? Preferably if you are not the doctor.
Who takes money?
Who takes money, who gets paid for treating patients. So it's a very good situation if the hospital is empty, there's no one diseased. So if all of us work on this disease of forgetfulness, if all of us work on trying to re-establish our position of being good servants of the Supreme Lord, then all of us can be away from the darkness and all that darkness has in it, in terms of good and bad, in terms of dualities. Yes? So in this world we'll see the good and we'll see the bad too. Because this world is meant for people who have turned away from the source of all goodness, all light. Is that all right? Does that answer your question?
Yeah. Thank you, Prabhuji.
You're welcome.
Yeah.
Yeah. Very good.
Anything else?
Yeah, so I had one question on the Vishwarupa.
Yes.
I know I'm probably going quite ahead, but one
You
of
can.
the basic questions my arrogant mind has is when you look at the object of context, right? I mean, you have to be away from something to see its in entirety. When you are a part of it, you can't see the whole structure.
Yeah.
So when Arjuna was basically able to look at the entire Vishwarupa, how did he see it?
How did he see it?
Was it in his mind, or did he really see it with his eyes in the physical sense? Because that's one question that I was always thinking quite a bit about.
Really wonderful question. That when Arjuna saw the Vishwarupa, was it his vision did he have? Was it his? Was it the real vision in terms of how we see things, or was it actual thing that he saw? Was it just concept or imaginative, or was it something within his mind that he saw? Kind of he imagined, he thought that okay, x plus y is equal to z. Therefore, if x is this, y is that, so z is this. Concepts like that. Did he come up with something like that? A good question. Okay, for this we'll have to be a little reflective, and I'll explain how. When I see you, what am I seeing? When you see me, what are you seeing? Just being very technical from the point of physics.
Light being reflected.
Just light being reflected off an object, isn't it? Where does identity come from? Because the eyes are simply seeing light being reflected, isn't it? So your form is there, but since light is being reflected off you, hitting my eyes, light is being reflected off various objects hitting my eyes, the reflection that's coming from you is a little different from that which comes from other objects, and therefore I can see contrast. That's as easy as it, right? Plus there are certain things, other things like what kind of color filters you have. So that will give you like color vision or not. So those are other factors, but this is basic, isn't it, physics? So how do I identify you as, hey, this is who you are? Is it the real you? Or is it the imaginative you? Is it the conceptual you?
It definitely has to be something as to, depending on how much intellect I have, whatever I perceive you, that is what should enter into my mind.
So that is what, if like for a tiger, do you think, like what is your name? What would
Kashyap.
Kashyap. Do you think even your pet dog, does a pet dog think this is Kashyap?
It just looks at me.
For him, if he could reveal, the dog could reveal, or a tiger, the tiger wouldn't like Kashyap or no Kashyap. Seems like to be very plump and healthy and fresh. If the tiger is hungry, right? Isn't it? Correct. Or if your dog suddenly goes crazy because of some infection, disease, the dog is just going to go mad seeing you. Correct? So, when we say real vision, what is it? It is a combination of practical physics, which is just like objects reflecting light, plus a conceptual idea of who you are. So you are brown, you are because your passport says that you are Indian, because you work here, therefore you are in this, this is your profession. These are all concepts of you. So that's when we say conceptual, that's the mind. The mind has the ability to identify with designations. Okay? So even within our regular day-to-day life, we are still not clear about how do we define vision as? How do I define what I'm seeing here in front? How do I define that? And that intellect is guided by what? Okay, but where is the input for that intellect to function on? Where is the data for that intellect to function on?
So,
No, how does the intellect choose? Man, woman, child, young, old? Where is all that data coming from for the intellect to choose from? Where does all that data come from? The input, where does it come from?
The input is, a good amount of that input is inborn probably, and some.
How can it be inborn? Then a 4-year child or a 2-year child should also be able to distinguish like that, right?
It does distinguish between who is the other and who is not.
From our senses, what we imbibe from our senses, what data we feed to our brain.
So who feeds the data? From where is that data coming from? Is it like around there? Is it like the cloud, virtual cloud?
It's our senses.
It is our
Intelligence.
The senses gather that from somewhere. Where is the pool from where the senses gather? Where is that
all
pool?
around us.
Yeah, so how was it that pool created?
would you say question again?
This data that the intellect kind of works on. Because when Mataji said that this is how you kind of say this is someone's identity, you interpret it as like that. So where does one get all that information from?
Something is self-learning. Part of it is
Self-learning. So what does that mean, self-learning? Where do you learn from?
Sensory perception.
teachers, from
It's our own
Teachers, from what has been collected over so much time, correct? Isn't it?
Yes.
Previous researchers, they came up with some nomenclature, they started calling that got accepted, everyone started accepting it. So this is how we kind of identify people. Now it's very easy to say, obviously I'm an Indian. No one needs to describe what is an Indian. Obviously I'm an American. Do we need to go into elaborate description about what is an Indian and what is an American? No, because we have already taken up the data within us. Either we have kind of just accepted it, or maybe we did introspect about it. We did reflect on it, whichever way it is, correct? That is how we accept any existence in this world. Based on what we have collected. And if it is beyond what we have collected, what do we do? Looks like something familiar. What is it? Looks like something familiar. When you see a new form of dosa, looks like a dosa, but does not taste like a dosa, does not have an aroma like a dosa. What do you say? What is that dosa-like thing? What you're just seeing is the object, but there's no identity established to it as of yet. Because within your pool of data, that identity has not been fit in. As soon as someone says, hey, this is whatever, some Spanish word for it, now you have additional information. So when we speak about what did Arjuna see, what are we trying to address here? Are we trying to address our understanding of objects based on the data that we have as an individual or as a collective human population? Well, in that case, maybe we'll find ourselves incapable. Am I trying to make this a little easier, or is it becoming too complicated? When we ask a question, what did Arjun see? Are we trying to ask that question with reference to how I in 2020 perceive things? Is that what we are trying to ask? Well, if that is what we are trying to do, then we may have to accept that the way we understand and perceive things could be incapable of understanding how Arjuna saw the universal form as. Now, going back to the Bhagavad Gita, the 11th chapter, Krishna informs Arjuna, the capabilities that you have are insufficient for seeing me.
Mm.
Therefore, I offer you some extra abilities right now. And translated into the English language, that extra abilities is defined as I give you divine eyes to see me. But when we read these two words, divine eyes, we think it kind of, again, those words seem to have some aura around it, golden colored light, mysticism about it. No, it is not that. If we think very scientifically and logically, Krishna has the ability. It is like you going to a NASA center and they're giving you glasses, or you going to a lab and they providing you with a microscope. They give you the ability to see things beyond what you could do right now. So Krishna gives Arjun the ability and says, only you have the ability to see me, Arjuna, and I give you that ability. Then what Arjun saw is being described by Vyasadeva. As it has been explained, that the same ability was given to a few other people like Vyasadeva too. Sanjaya also saw that.
Bhishma is
Few other people, it has been mentioned, some of the demigods also had the ability that has been described. Okay? So Krishna gave that ability to these people. What he did was, he filled up their vocabulary with newer concepts so that they could relate to what they are seeing. So Arjun was not asking, that head-like thing, what is that? That hand-like thing, what is that? That hair-like thing, what is that? He is not saying like that. He's saying, I can see multitudes of hands, multitudes of legs. I can see how everything, the trees, the oceans, the planets, all of that are within your form. So he is using words that he has, but he has established, because Krishna gave him that facility, he has established a conceptual idea of how to define what he is seeing. Yes? So, there are two things needed here. One is, if somebody is God, then God should have the ability to reveal the universal form. Otherwise, that person is most probably not God. And second is, God should also give us the ability to perceive the universal form. If God comes and says, see, look at my universal form, and doesn't give us the ability, we are like, where? And God says, I don't care, because I showed the form to you. So I am God. I established that for myself. You have to accept it. So that is not God. So God should be able to reveal the universal form and also give his devotee the vision to see the universal form. Is that all right? Is that logical? Yeah? Okay.
Can I add to that?
Please add.
Yeah. No, one more question is that.
Oh, question. I thought you wanted to add to the explanation.
No.
Okay.
Not that much.
No,
So in
it's
the
possible.
picture, whatever is we have seen with that Virat Roop is some of outside we see some demigods. And,
Yes.
And the other side is some Asuras. Is that right? Devas.
You tell me.
No, I am unclear.
You tell me what you saw in the picture.
Yeah, picture we saw that some of the demigods that we don't worship or we really don't know who they are.
Correct.
And then now you explained that there are tree forms, and so in the Bhagavad Gita we still not come across those scriptures. So
Yeah. 11th chapter.
11th chapter.
Yes.
So that details about the forms. Is that right?
Yeah.
11th chapter of the Gita.
Yeah.
Yes. Vishwarupa Darshan Yoga.
Yeah.
Okay. So probably when we go through that, we'll come.
Yes, you'll read the description. Yes, you'll read this. Well, these pictures that we have seen, of the universal form. Uh, most of you are married, right?
Yeah.
Everyone is married here. So did the marriage, this entire process, did it begin with someone looking at a picture of the opposite person,
Yes.
like a photo,
Yeah. Yeah.
photograph,
Yes.
or did you meet the opposite person and then did you introduce the opposite person to your family members, or sometimes maybe there was a moment where you showed them their picture,
Picture, yeah. Right.
photo?
Photo.
Now let us take, because it is helpful for me to explain. Let us say that this is a case where you saw the picture at
Yes.
one point of time, a photo of
Mm.
of your partner, right?
Mm.
The picture, how did you feel about it? And when you got to know the person, how did you feel about that? Did the picture reveal everything? Or the picture revealed something more? Or maybe less?
Yeah, more of it. Sometimes, yeah. Yeah, it can
Usually less.
Yeah.
Sometimes, yeah, it could be less or more, isn't it? The
Yeah.
picture.
Something is revealed, yeah. Some matches.
So when you meet the person, you find that the picture does not really,
completely revealed.
yeah,
It's not
do the person good. It's not the total person, correct?
Yeah.
So it is just the camera's presentation of the person.
Yeah.
That is it.
Mm.
The camera's presentation, and today with photoshopping, it can be the camera plus the
Feeling.
artist's presentation of it, isn't it? With filters in cameras now, selfies,
True.
so much more that can happen to pictures. But definitely, it is not the total person. When you get to know the total person, you're like, if I had known then, looking at a picture, at a photo, I would have been better prepared. Is it not? So that is what happens with the picture of the universal form.
Mm.
It does not in any ways
Cannot represent
Mm.
completely.
represent the real universal form that Arjuna saw. Not in any ways.
Mm.
It is it is an understatement of who the universal form is.
Mm.
A serious understatement.
Only a small glimpse of what Arjuna meant.
Well, if all that the picture makes us think is that it's scary. So many hands, so many legs, so many faces.
So many.
It's like you show that to a child and the child will run away. Because we kind of, let's suppose you enter your house, it's dark, and suddenly there's a light that focuses on the universal form. All of a sudden, the most devout of persons would also be like, what is that? Right? When Arjuna saw that picture, he did not have that effect on him. He wasn't panic stricken. But when he saw the effect of the universal form, what the universal form was doing, the universal form was manifesting its effect as time and destroying everything. That created fear in him. The universal form did not create fear in him. But seeing what the universal form could effectively do, he saw everything being destroyed by the universal form. And that created fear in him. Like, the form is beautiful, but what the form is doing, I cannot relate with that. So please remove this form and show me your personal form. Arjuna says that. Okay? So when you see the universal form, some artists may think that let me put in certain faces, known faces. So the only known faces the artist knows is of what they think is of many gods. So one face will have a trunk, another face will have the head of a bird, another face will have the head of a horse, and then a few faces will have long fangs. and then it's like universal form is full of devas and asuras. No, 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 no. That is the artist's rendition. The universal form may or may not have those faces. What Arjuna saw was